Hi, let's continue Mein Kampf. During my last read, again, it was a really somewhat pompous vituperation by Hitler against the Jews, and again, I couldn't really find much substance. Maybe it it is because of the purple prose, flowery prose by Hitler, and hence it was very hard for me to spot uh, the substantive criticisms against Jews, or maybe he was just a plain idiot. And yeah, he was talking about his fellow workers and the Jews. They easily forgot how their arguments were disproven the day before, and the next day they resumed the normal business and thought that they were right. And also Hitler said that the Jews often dissimulate, that means often conceal and masquerade their real intention, use very flowery words to hide their intention, and basically, in short, Hitler really thought that Jews were the most iniquitous race ever. Yeah, I'll continue. May it not be that this people which has lived only for the earth has been promised the earth as a recompense. Is our right to struggle for our own self-preservation based on reality, or is it a merely subjective thing? Fate answered the question for me inasmuch as it led me to make a detached and exhaustive inquiry into the Marxist teaching and the activities of the Jewish people in connection with it. The Jewish doctrine of Marxism repudiates the aristocratic principle of nature and substitutes for it the eternal privilege of force and energy, numerical mass and its dead weight. Thus, it denies the individual worth of the human personality, impugns the teaching that nationhood and race have a primary significance, and by doing this, it takes away the very foundations of human existence and human civilization. If the Marxist teaching were to be accepted as the foundation of the life of the universe, it would lead to the disappearance of all order that is conceivable to the human mind, and thus the adoption of such a law would provoke chaos in the structure of the greatest organism that we know, with the result that the inhabitants of this earthly planet would finally disappear. Should the Jew, with the aid of his Marxist creed, triumph over the people of this world, his crown would be the funeral wreath of humankind, and this planet will once again follow its orbit through ether, without any human life on its surface, as it did million years ago. This is a bit figurative, it's a bit metaphorical imagery. Even Hitler used literary technique when he wrote his book. But one thing I would like to digress and point out is very interesting. Although Hitler previously said that basically Jews were controlling the social democratic parties, they were the social democrats. But at the same time, something orthogonal to social democrats, which was Marxism, also became part of Jews. Because remember, in one of the previous passage, Hitler mentioned that the social democrat, who was very astute and shrewd, they leverage on the sentiment of the workers, the proletariat, and they quickly assimilate all the workers, trades union, into themselves, and therefore it became very, very odd. Even Marxists, all the Marxist workers became part of Jews, social democrats. I'll continue reading. And so I believe today that my conduct is in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. In standing guard against the Jew, I am defending the handiwork of the Lord. Chapter 3: Political Reflections arising out of my sojourn in Vienna. Generally speaking, a man should not publicly take part in politics before he has reached the age of 30. though of course exceptions must be made in the case of those who are naturally gifted with extraordinary political abilities. That at least is my opinion today, and the reason for it is that until he reaches his 30th year or thereabouts, a man's mental development will mostly consist in acquiring and sifting such knowledge as is necessary for the groundwork of a general platform from which he can examine the different political problems that arise from day to day and be able to adopt a definite attitude towards each. A man must first acquire a fund of general ideas and fit them together so as to form an organic structure of personal thought or outlook on life. Although how, then he will have that mental equipment without which he cannot form his own judgments on particular questions of the day, and he will have acquired those qualities that are necessary for consistency and steadfastness in the formation of political opinions. Such a man is now qualified, at least subjectively, to take his part in the political conduct of public affairs. If these prerequisite conditions are not fulfilled, and if a man should enter political life without this equipment, he will run a twofold risk. In the first place, he might find during the course of the events that the stand which he originally took in regard to some essential question was wrong. He will now have to abandon his former position or else stick to it against his better knowledge and riper wisdom, and after his reason and convictions have already proved it untenable. If he adopt the former line of action, he will find himself in a difficult personal situation because in giving up a position he dared to maintain, he will appear inconsistent and will have no right to expect his followers to remain as loyal to his leadership as they were before. And as regards the followers themselves, they may easily look upon their leader's change of policy as showing a lack of judgment inherent in his character. Moreover, the change must cause in them a certain feeling of discomfiture vis-a-vis those whom the leader formerly opposed. If he adopts the second alternative, which so frequently happens today, then public pronouncements of the leader have no longer his personal persuasion to support them. And the more that is the case, the defense of his cause will be all the more hollow and superficial. He now descends to the adoption of vulgar means in his defense, while he himself no longer dreams seriously of standing by his political protestations to the last, for no man would die in defense of something in which he does not believe. He makes increasing demands of his followers. Indeed, the greater be the measure of his own insincerity, the more unfortunate and inconsiderate become his claims on his party adherents. Finally, he throws aside the last vestiges of true leadership and begins to play politics. This means that he becomes one of those whose only consistency is that inconsistency, associated with our bearing insolence and oftentimes an artful mendacity developed to a shameless high degree. Should such a person, to the misfortune of all decent people, succeed in becoming a parliamentary deputy, it will be clear from the outset that for him the essence of political activity consists in a heroic struggle to keep permanent hold of this milk bottle as a source of livelihood for himself and his family. The more his wife and children are dependent on him, the more stubbornly will he fight to maintain for himself the representation of his parliamentary constituency. For that reason, any other person who gives evidence of political capacity is his personal enemy. In every new movement, he will apprehend the possible beginning of his own downfall, and everyone who is a better man than himself will appear to him in the light of a menace. I shall subsequently deal more fully with the problem to which this kind of parliamentary vermin give rise. When a man has reached his 30th year, he has still a great deal to learn. That is obvious, but henceforward what he learns will principally be an amplification of his basic ideas. It will be fitted in with them organically so as to fill up the framework of the fundamental well-turned how, which he already possesses. What he learns anew will not imply the abandonment of principles already held, but rather a deeper knowledge of those principles, and thus his colleagues will never have the discomforting feeling that they have been hitherto falsely led by him. On the contrary, their confidence is increased when they perceive that their leader's qualities are steadily developing along the lines of an organic growth which results from the constant assimilation of new ideas, so that the followers look upon this process as signifying an enrichment of the doctrines in which they themselves believe. In their eyes, every such development is a new witness to the correctness of that whole body of opinion which has hitherto been held. A leader who has to abandon the platform founded on his general principles because he recognizes the foundations is false and can act with honor only when he declares his readiness to accept the final consequences of his erroneous views. In such a case, he ought to refrain from taking public part in any further political activity. Having once gone astray on essential things, he may possibly go astray for a second time. But anyhow, he has no right whatsoever to expect a demand that his fellow citizens should continue to give him their support. How little such a line of conduct commends itself to our public leaders nowadays is proved by the general corruption prevalent among the cabal, which at the present moment feels itself called to political leadership. In the whole cabal, there is scarcely one who is properly equipped for this task. Although in those days I used to give more time than most others to the consideration of political questions, yet I carefully refrained from taking an open part in politics. Only to a small circle did I speak of those things which agitated my mind were the cause of constant preoccupation for me. The habit of discussing matters within such a restricted group had many advantages in itself. Rather than talk at them, I learned to feel my way into methods of thoughts and views of those men around me. Oftentimes such ways of thinking and such views are quite primitive. Thus I took every possible occasion to increase my knowledge of men. Nowhere among the German people was the opportunity of making such a study so favorable as in Vienna. In the old Danubian monarchy, political thought was wider in its range and such a richer variety of interests than in the Germany of that epoch, excepting certain parts of Prussia, Hamburg, and the districts bordering on North Sea. When I speak of Austria here, I mean that part of the great Habsburg Empire which the formation of this state, but whose population was for several centuries also the exclusive source of cultural life in that political system whose structure was so artificial. As time went on, the stability of the Austrian state and the guarantee of its continued existence depended more and more on the maintenance of this germ cell of that Habsburg Empire. The hereditary imperial provinces constituted the heart of the empire, and it was this heart that constantly sent the blood of life pulsating through the entire political and cultural system. Corresponding to the heart of the empire, victims signify the brain and the will. At that time, Vienna presented an appearance which made one think of her as an enthroned queen, whose authority's sway united the conglomeration of heterogeneous nationalities that lived under the Habsburg scepter. Okay, I'll stop here. See you in another episode. Goodbye.